The most dangerous lie you've probably ever told is the one you tell yourself every morning when you look at yourself in the mirror and convince yourself that your armor is actually your skin. If you're an unmapped map maker, you have you become like a master of the fine performance, like a high level athlete in the sport of being unbreakable. But the structural fatigue of wearing like this 100-pound mask of steel while trying to navigate a world that requires a human heart is starting to snap the hinges of your soul. You grew up with this silence of this protection gap where the absence of a father meant that every vulnerability was a target and every mistake was a potential catastrophe. So to survive, you didn't just build a map, you built a fortress and then you called it your personality. And you decided that if you were the strongest, the most stoic, the most reliable person in every room, then no one would ever see the terrified child who still doesn't know where their North Star is. So you're the character in this story who has maybe forgotten that armor is meant for the battlefield, not the dinner table. And the weight of your perceived strength is the very thing that's preventing you from ever finding peace. So this perpetual performance is this fundamental barrier to experiencing the life of a Binteger. See, to be a Binteger is to be a whole individual who is intentionally moving towards experiencing wholeness by aligning their internal values with their external actions. This is the essence of integrity. We often think of integrity as a moral checklist, right? But for the unmapped map maker, it's better understood as this structural integrity, like the way a building stands because its internal supports are in perfect alignment, right, with its external load. So when you wear this mask of strength while your internal world is crumbling from exhaustion, you're living a life of structural failure. You are disintegrated. You are a person who is divided against themselves because you're spending all your creative energy trying to keep that weak version of you hidden and in the basement while the strong version does all the talking. So becoming a Binteger means having the courage to be an undivided unit. It means realizing that a whole individual doesn't really need a mask because their strength comes from alignment of their truth, not the thickness of the steel that they're wearing on their armor. So this shift towards alignment is the only way to achieve that into me see intimacy that we've been chasing. That's my simple definition for intimacy. You think your mask of strength is what makes people respect you, but it's actually what keeps them from loving you. So you can't experience true connection through a visor. When you tell your partner or your children or your friends that you're fine when you're actually drowning, you're committing these small acts of abandonment against them. You're denying them the opportunity to see the real map maker. And like intimacy requires the vulnerability of being unmasked, of showing the places where the map is kind of blurry and where the terrain may be rough. The Binteger knows that intimacy is not a threat to your power. It's the source of your power. True power isn't the ability to stay unchanged by the world around you. It's the integrity to be an individual who is honest about their own journey. So the heavy mask that you're carrying is a direct legacy of the mirror that you never had. And so in a mapped childhood, ideally like a father serves as that mirror that reflects a child's value right back to them. He sees their efforts, their fear, their fatigue, and he validates them without ever making them about his identity, right? But without that mirror, you had to invent your own reflection, and so you chose the soldier. You decided to be you decided that you had to be worthy of the space you're in. You had to be the one who never complained and who never folded. And so you filled that protection gap with a layer of callousness, mistaking that for maturity. And now as an adult, you're still reacting to the silence of your past by being as loud as possible with your competence, right? But the Binteger here realizes that your value isn't a trophy you had to guard. It's this inherent quality of your being that you are called to embody, because you don't have to be tough to be whole. So I want you to sit with the reality of your current exhaustion. See, you're likely that person who everyone turned to in a crisis, right? You're the rock of the family. You're the one who just had it all figured out. But who does the rock lean on when it starts to crack? If your answer here is nobody, then you're living this life of high performance, but it's in isolation. You are a ghost in a suit of armor, maybe providing a lifestyle for others while you're starving yourself of this same life. This is the cost of compromised integrity. You are an integer or a Binteger that has been forced to act like a fraction, showing only the strong numerator side and hiding the human denominator side, right? Integrity, or the state of being a whole individual, demands that you stop this performance. It demands that you align your external fine with your internal reality, your internal truth. Now, the psychological cost of this mask is this slow and steady erosion of your creativity and your joy. And you can't selectively numb your emotions when you numb the fear of being seen as weak. Because then you also numb the capacity to feel pride and true connection and peace. You're living your life through a filter and experiencing the world in grayscale, because the mask doesn't allow for the full spectrum of color. And this is why you feel so detached. Even when you're winning, you are winning as a character, not as an individual. The Binteger knows that wholeness requires the integration of the shadow and the light. It requires the integrity to say, listen, I am powerful, but gosh, I'm also tired presently. And that level of honesty is probably the only thing that can release you and the pressure that you're putting on your soul. So as we unpack this, I can hear some questions rising from the unmapped parts of your mind. Because yes, you are the character in this story who is terrified that if you take that mask off, the world may stop spinning. You might be asking, if I'm not the strong one, then who am I? See, my entire identity has been built on being a person who can handle all of this. This is the core crisis, I would say, of the map maker. You have mistaken your utility for your identity. You think that you are the armor, but you're also the person inside that armor too. And taking the mask off isn't an act of losing yourself, it's an act of finding yourself. A Binteger's identity is found in their alignment, not in their output. And when you stop trying to handle all of this, you finally have the space to handle the things that actually matter, like your peace, your integrity, your relationships. And you're more than just a tool for other people's stability. You are also an individual with your own map that you have to draw. Another question that often surfaces here is, won't I be a disappointment to the people who rely on me? I mean, they expect me to be unshakable. This is a projection of your own fear, right? Most of the people who love you are actually exhausted maybe by your fine act. They They feel the wall that you've put up, and it makes them feel unnecessary. So by staying in the mask, you're inadvertently telling your family that they aren't strong enough to handle the real you. And when you have the integrity to be real, to be whole, to be vulnerable, you're actually giving your loved ones this gift. And you're giving them a gift of a real partner, a real father, a real friend. And you're moving from being a provider of things to being a provider of your presence that's unique to you. That is probably the highest form of integrity that you can achieve. You might also be asking perhaps saying, I've been this way for so long that I don't know how to take that mask off. What if the mask is rusted shut? The mask isn't rusted, it's just heavy. And you don't take it off all at once in a grand theatrical moment. You take it off in those small intimacy interactions of daily life. You start by being honest about a small fatigue. You start by maybe admitting you don't have the answer to a minor question. And you see, each act of honesty is a turn on the screwdriver that's loosening that mask. And integrity is a practice, not a destination. You are a Binteger in progress. We all are. And the goal here isn't to be perfectly unmasked by tomorrow. It's to be more aligned today than you were yesterday. And you're learning this language of an individual after a lifetime of speaking the language of a soldier. Now, a common concern for many of you is, what if the weakness that I'm hiding is actually as bad as I think that it is? What if there's nothing underneath the mask but this scared kid who can't really do the job? This is the ultimate fear, if you will, the fear of being a fraud, right? But here's the secret of the Binteger. The scared kid is not a liability. He's actually the source of your intuition, your empathy, your drive. And when you integrate that part of yourself, when you have the integrity to bring him into the light, you don't become weaker. You actually become more solid. You become a person who's hiding you become the person who's hiding a sacred kid, and someone now who is able to be integrated and whole. A person who has embraced that kid is unshakable because there is no longer a secret that he has to guard. See, wholeness is integration of all of your ages and all of your stages in life into this one undivided individual. Now, you might also wonder, is it even safe to be real in my industry or in my social circle that I'm in? People are always looking for weaknesses to exploit, and so that's why I protect myself, right? Here's important that we distinguish between vulnerability and indiscretion. Integrity doesn't mean you tell everyone your deepest fears at the grocery store. It just means that you're an individual who is no longer lying to themselves or to the people in their circle of safety. So you can still be a sharp and effective leader in your field while being a Binteger. In fact, people are drawn to leaders who are real. There is a weight and a presence to an aligned individual that a masked person could never really replicate. And when you stop leaking energy into the performance of being fine, you have more energy now for the execution of being amazing and excellent in what you do. Finally, you might be asking, how do I handle the shame that comes when I finally admit that I am struggling? See, that shame is probably the last defense of the mask. It's the unaligned father voice telling you that you are a failure for even being human. So you counter that shame with the integrity of your current coordinates. You say, I'm an individual who's currently unmapped in this area. And that's the truth. See, shame cannot survive the light of honest alignment. And when you are a Binteger, you realize that your strength isn't a sign of a broken map. It's a sign of challenging territory. You are the hero of the story. And heroes get tired. Heroes get lost. Heroes don't pretend that they aren't. So the era of the mask, let's bring it to an end, because we're finally realizing that it's really a prison and not a palace. And we can't be a Binteger while we are living a life that is fundamentally a lie, right? Wholeness requires us to stop being the tough guy and to start being a true guy. It requires the integrity to admit your armor is heavy and you're ready to put it down. You're moving towards the state of survival strength, and you're going on now into even integrated resilience. This is one that is very close to the core. I want you to imagine a day where you don't have to check the hinges of your mask before you leave the house. Imagine with me the freedom of being the same person at work, at home, and in the quiet of your own mind. This is what it feels like to be an undivided individual. When you're able to align your internal truth with your external presence, that exhaustion just begins to lift. You aren't really fine anymore. You're something far better. You are now being real. You're being whole. You're being an integer. And the substance of this truth is really meant to liberate you from the performance of your own life. It's meant to show you that your humanity is not a flaw in this map, but it's the very compass that will lead you home. You are ready to be a whole individual. You are ready to be seen. You are ready to stop the act and start actually living, because you are that unmapped map maker. But today you're just finally beginning to take off that mask, that helmet. But listen, as we lower the mask and admit our exhaustion, there's a likelihood we can be confronted with this deep and jagged reason for why we put the armor off in the first place, or why we put the armor on in the first place. See, when we stop the act, we finally also see the wounds that were hiding underneath the steel. We start realizing that our strength was really just a way to cover up the marks that were left by this childhood that we didn't choose. So in tomorrow's episode, we're going to look at the scars of surviving our childhood. And we're going to explore why we're still perhaps carrying the pain of the past and how to find integrity to heal those scars rather than just trying to hide them. So join me for tomorrow, where we will explore that theme. Thank you for listening in today's episode. Listen, I'd love to hear how these ideas, these things I've been sharing are landing with you. Would you write them down in the comments? I'd love to have you join that conversation. I'll see you tomorrow.